Cuga Lake here in Wells. All these geese don't seem to care for me walking down here. My new friend.
All right.
Oh.
Hello. It's freezing in my place. It's like probably 0. And when it gets that cold, it's really hard to eat this place, so I'm kind of bundled up. And I work a day job now that is quite kind of demanding of my time and energy, but I want to get through these stories. So this is story 24, the Weeping Woman of the Inn. And I've done this story over and over, and I get long-winded about it. I'm going to tell this story, and then I also want to talk about something that occurred to me when I did story 23 and this story, particularly story 23, when I discussed in detail what the young woman in Indian Mound Cemetery was wearing. And it was like, how was I able to see that level of detail of her? But I saw very clearly. Kind of unnatural way I was able to see that. And it's unnatural in this story, the level of emotion that I was able to pick up from this weeping woman. So Aurora, New York, is on the lake shore of Cuga Lake, which is a finger lake in central New York. It's a small town that probably saw its heyday. I think in 1850 it was full of a lot of well-to-do people, and Wells Fargo, the bank that's still around and such, the founder of that founded Wells College, all women's college in Aurora, and some other prominent people settled there and called it home and built mansions. And one of their drinking establishments was the Aurora Inn. They built in 1830, and it's still there, and it's still the inn, and that's where this little encounter ghost story takes place. At this time, the place wasn't yet, they put a lot of money into it and really did a beautiful job restoring the place to its original grandeur, probably grander than it ever was, honestly. But they made that place really nice. And this took place just before they did all that remodeling work. And I'd never set foot in the place before. I don't even think I'd never been in the town. My parents moved to a town called King Ferry, New York, which is a very small farm town on the lake shore of Cuga Lake. And, excuse me. Sorry. I was living in Whitehall, which is up by Lake George, north of Lake George, in the Adirondack Mountains. And I used to come home and visit my parents usually once a month. And this time it was mid to late January. And I remember all this because I wrote all this down. Years ago, I wrote down most of these ghost stories. I wrote them all down. And I like to write. That's one of the things I like to do is write. So you're going to get all these, you're going to wonder, why does he remember this level of detail on these? Because I wrote these down a long time ago. And I then, as now, one of my favorite quotes is by Sir Walter Scott, a writer, Scottish writer from 1700s. And he said, and I like this, integrity is a gift a man gives himself. Integrity is a gift a man gives himself, a woman for that matter, and no one can take it away from him unless he gives it away. I like that. So my point is, I did not embellish on my writing then, and I don't embellish or lie or make things up in any way that I'm cognizant of when I tell these stories. And you only have my word on it. That's it. So So I was home. It was mid to late January. Everything's covered in snow, freezing out, really cold, probably below 0 Fahrenheit. And it's Saturday night. My parents had gone to bed. And I think at the time I was about 30 years old, maybe 20, late 20s, 30. And I was bored, restless, single, and I decided to go out and explore the area. And I started driving up Route 90 that goes along the lake shore, and I came into the town of Aurora, and I hadn't been in there before to this night. And the town itself is everything's covered in snow. It looked like something off a Christmas postcard from the olden days. And I've got pictures. I drove up there a week ago and took pictures during the daytime of the town and the Aurora Inn where this takes place. It's very, very quaint, kind of Victorian town, that very quiet town, very quiet. There's no money, no business, no work there really much. There's the college. So on this particular night I drove up there. There was no other traffic on the road. There was nobody to be seen anywhere. And it was about 11:30 or midnight. And it was clear out, crystal clear out. And I see the Aurora Inn. And it's a beautiful old building. You see pictures of it. And it's lit up. Unlike the rest of the town that's gone to sleep, this town's lit up. And I'm like, all right. There were no cars in front of it. No cars at all. But it's an inn. An inn usually has a bar, right? So there's a bar, there's people. And so I pull up, I had a Jeep, got out of that, and when I wrote the story, I recalled, I remember it now, actually. It was so cold out. When I stepped out of the Jeep, I got just hit. You know, when it's so cold, your face, your nose, cheeks, everything just gets frozen instantly. It was freezing out. So I walk in to the inn, and the first thing I noticed is I didn't see anybody, but I heard music coming from the back of the place, contemporary rock music. Good. There's a bar still open. Maybe, some people in it. But to my right and left were two big rooms that were empty of people, but furnished like from the Victorian era, like wealthy Victorian era. And nice, really nice, lush furniture, and old portraits that I'm going to show you some of those pictures on here, so I don't need to blab on about it any more than I am already. And a huge staircase that went upstairs, and it occurred to me that people, at least around this part of New York, if they had any money at all or wanted to pretend like they had some money, and I've lived in some old houses here, the first thing you do when you walk in their front door, first thing you see is a huge, architect-wise, is a huge staircase. And those giant, magnificent staircases seem to like make a statement, a financial statement possibly. And this place was no exception. I mean, hand-carved banisters and hand-lathed and turned spindles and the staircase itself, the steps the steps were wide enough that you could walk two, maybe three people abreast up and down those stairs. You get the picture. Gone with the wind kind of thing. This place had that. And it's very warm ambiance, very kind of a dull lighting, like the candles here. And old portraits and paintings all over the place, and furniture and such. And I'm looking around, I'm like kind of impressed. I got kind of a good feeling about the place. And so I'm sauntering back down this hallway to find out where the music's coming from, because like I said, I've never been in there before. And I come into a bar, really long, big old bar. And this was before they remodeled it. When I went in there, it was just, I hate to say it, it's just a beer joint. Really, like a farmer bar. And that's how most people in this area make their money. A lot of them are farmers. So I call it a farmer bar. And they had a pool table. and they had a little place for like your local garage bands to play. And I was hoping, I'll be honest with you, that I'd meet some, it had an equestrian feel about it, equestrian feel. And I was hoping to meet some equestrian young ladies in there with no company but welcome sight to see me walk in there, like at last, our Prince Charming has arrived. That didn't happen. Instead, I got a rather angry looking barmaid. Woman looked to be about 40. She gave me a dirty look that I picked up instantly, icy. I wasn't welcome. And I put it together instantly. She was probably closing. I said, "Do I have time for a beer?" And she says, and I hadn't had any beer to drink at this point, for the record. She says, "Yeah, just one, only one." And she said it in a way that I got the message. I said, "Oh, thanks anyway. Have a good night." Good night. And so I walked out of there, and on my way out, the 2 rooms that I talked about when I came in, the front, I call them parlors. I was just kind of taking in, kind of like a tourist in a museum, kind of appreciating the old furniture and the old paintings and such, and, taking in the vibes. And I went to one, and I looked at this one portrait of a woman on the wall, and I'm going to put that portrait up right there. So I'm looking at this painting, and I just took this picture last week because all these paintings are still in there. They're part of the place, part of the history. She's part of the history to that place, the original history, her and her husband. And I'm looking at this painting of this woman. And at the time, I don't see it now when I look at it, but at the time, even though she's smiling, there was a great sad weariness that I saw in her eyes, I thought. And I don't know, I'm being romantic, but that's what I felt. And I thought that she looked so weary of life. And at that time, suddenly in that room, a woman started crying, weeping, really loud, weeping. It was coming from all around me in that room. And she had a voice probably about as deep as mine, but in a female way. She had a deep voice for a woman. Not unnaturally deep, just a deep, full-bodied voice. And she was sobbing. And I'm not going to demonstrate the sobbing. I made this video before and it just looks ridiculous. I'm just going to explain to you, try to give you a picture of her sobbing. I want you to imagine somebody, possibly yourself, hopefully not being that sad. When the sorrow hits, and there's just abject sorrow and despair, all is lost, no hope, total loss. And she's sobbing, 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 sobbing. And in between sobs, when she'd catch her breath, and then after she'd catch her breath, she'd say the same thing. She's saying, "Oh God, please, no, God. Oh my God, no." And then she'd go on sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, catch her breath, and then say, "God, no, my God, no, please, God, no. Oh my God." And she sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and she kept doing that, just sobbing and saying, "Oh God, no." And I got the feeling, deep, strong feeling, that somebody had just learned of the death of their son. I just knew it. And I didn't think ghost, and I usually don't in these situations. I first wondered where it was coming from, and it just kept going on, and it just kept captivating me, making me want to help this person. And I couldn't figure it out because it was coming from all the way around me, all 4 walls. It's just the whole room seemed to be just reverberating this sound. And this woman's, it was coming from like a sobbing from deep in the chest and deeper into the soul, just coming out, so stricken. And there was only one other room in that room, and it was a large coat room. And I looked in there was nobody in there. Nobody in the room. And the sobbing's continuing. And as loud as I'm talking to you, I'm hearing this, loud and clear, if not more clear than I'm talking, honestly. So then I thought that barmaid must have just gotten a bad phone call, because the room next to that one was the reception room, where if you were going to take a room out upstairs, it's like a hotel. It's where you checked in and checked out. They had a desk and a phone and stuff there, a coat rack and all that, a computer. I thought she must have just gotten a really bad phone call and somebody's died. Somebody very close to her. I thought her child has died. And I'm listening to this woman going on and on, sobbing, and catch her breath, and oh God, no. And just wasn't like a recording, wasn't like just like a sound loop, you know what I mean? It wasn't like that. She just, it was a woman crying, and abject grief, and the emotion that I got loud and clear from that was that there was no hope. It was a complete loss in your face, as it would be if you suddenly learn of the sudden, unexpected death of your child. And that's what I thought what had happened. And this plays into this story. And I was determined to find this person and put my arm around them. And I'm not the sort of person that just puts their arm around people like, I'm not the huggy-feely type person. I'm not the opposite either, but if you would have heard this, how sad it was, the intensity of it, you'd be moved, I would hope, to be at least the same. So I thought, no, but this woman should not be alone in this level of grieving. I don't care. I thought it was a barmaid. I don't care how nasty she was to me, kind of snippy. I need to find her and put my arm around her. She should not be alone with this. It was that sad. So I left that room. As soon as I left the room, it stopped. But I didn't put that together as anything. I went and looked in the reception room. Nobody was there. I was kind of shocked. Thought I would find her there crying. Nobody was there. Nobody was anywhere. I went in the back. That woman was still back there, and she looked at me. She was still cleaning up, and she didn't look very happy to see me walking back in there, because I told her I was leaving. And I said to her, I spoke first. I said, who else is in this building? And she says, nobody but me and you. And she said, just me after you leave. And she says, why? And I said, well, I told her about this woman. I told her I heard this woman crying. It was so sad. And I said, I just want to find her to help her out. And you know what? I'm still not thinking ghost. And the barmaid looks at me and she says, thanks a lot, buddy. Just like that. She was mad. And at this point, ghost story off. I had enough. I looked at her. I said, hey, what's your problem anyway? She says, my problem? She says to me. I'll tell you what my problem is. You're going to leave, right? I said, yeah. She says, well, I got to stay here by myself and lock this place up alone. She says, not only that, they're closing the place tonight. It's the end of the season, and I've got to lock the whole building up, every room. I've got to go through the whole place and make sure all the windows are closed and everything. And there's a three-story building. She says, by myself. That's what my problem is, she said. And I kind of got it at that point. And I said, I'm sorry, and good night. I left, right? And on my way out, I looked all over the place again, searching for somebody. And at this point, I'm starting to think ghost, finally, putting it together. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. And I left. And that would be the end of the story, except when I came back to visit my parents after that, which was, like I said, about once a month, I started talking to some people in the area that worked there. A few women that waitress there, and another guy that was a cook there. And they said, and I went to the place and talked to the people. Actually, there's like a year later, there's new, that woman wasn't there anymore. Oh, they closed it down. I got to say, when she said she was locking the place up, they used to close the place down in midwinter because it didn't generate enough business then, it does now, to to keep it open through the winter and heat that big building. So she was locking it up for the season to reopen it in April, which is understandable. But people told me that I wasn't the only one to experience this there. I was told that they called her the woman in white because most people saw her, they didn't hear her. They saw a woman in a white dress, usually on the stairwell, and they saw her in the basement. And actually, they were starting to have a hard time keeping help there because I was told a couple of the waitresses quit because of it. They'd run into her and they were frightened. And I heard they had a cook there. There's a really good cook, and he ran into her also. Just came out of a door in one of the rooms in there, and there she was right there in front of him. And he quit that night, never went back in there. He was that scared. And they said they had heard that a few people, it was rare, but other people have heard her crying. And I said, y'all, I heard her crying, and I went into length describing it. And so that's that. But the other thing is that I want to mention on this story, I never saw her again. I didn't go in there again, really, a few times. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, they had a fire in there. And if you Google Aurora Inn, the Wikipedia article will tell you on that hotel or that inn that there was a fire there, probably in the 1840s. I'm not sure, roundabout there. But what they don't tell you in the Wikipedia article that I was told by people that worked there was that, yeah, during that fire, a woman and her son lost their life from smoke inhalation on the third floor. And that adds up because of what the story I just told you. I imagine it was probably her, and it must have been awful. Imagine that you go to a place with your son and you die of smoke inhalation. It didn't burn to death. The place caught fire, but it didn't burn down. They put the fire out. It took a lot of work. But suddenly you become a spirit and you realize your son's dead. Your dear son's dead. And you're dead too. And you might have had big plans for tomorrow and all that other stuff. And now it's all gone. And that would generate the level of grief that I heard that woman crying. And that's the story of the weeping woman in the end. Now, what I want to tell you, something I noticed the other day, just a little note. On story 23, when I was describing the young woman running in the graveyard, and I described her clothing, I said I could make out the print on her dress, and I was like 75 feet away on the road driving, going to work, and there wasn't any traffic, so I slowed down almost to a stop watching this. But yet I could see her sneakers, and they were dirty and really old-fashioned, uncommon. If they didn't look like anything you could buy today. And her dress, I saw the print and the print pattern on it. It was a beige dress with like a darker brownish print pattern on it. It was a fleur de lis. I think I'm saying it right. It's French fleur de lis, flower of the lily. And I'll put an image of it. That image, kind of common. You've all seen it. And that's actually a religious symbol in France from the medieval days. It's kind of what I would call the French equivalent of the Irish shamrock. And shamrock's the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. And this more or less that, the French version of that. But I was able to see the print very clearly on her dress, and I saw her shoes very clearly, as if you're just holding them in front of me on the table in a brightly lit room. And just like I was able to hear the emotion, it was raw from this crying woman, unnatural. And like I saw the beauty of the angels and unnatural. I think when I see these things and when other people do at times, we're seeing them with kind of our spirit as well as our flesh. Maybe that's what it is, our flesh and our spirit. I don't know. But I think I've seen them with both sets of eyes, ears at that time. And like when you see something spiritual or hear it, you're not getting it through the flesh. These filters, I call it filters. You're hearing it with fleshly ears and interpreting it with, a flesh and our experience as humans. And this comes out raw, completely unfiltered, clear. Like the girl running in the graveyard, her red sash that was wrapped around her waist was like coral sea red, brilliant. There's no color. It shouldn't have looked that brilliant red. It looked like coral red, but really brilliant red. I'm not saying it was glowing. I'm just saying the color of it was more vibrant than what's natural. And I could see their clothing and such more natural, more clearly than I would take in normally. And just like I heard this crying woman, her emotion came through completely, and it overpowered me, and it was really raw. And that's something I think about these things. I don't advocate ghost hunting. I'm not a ghost hunter. And I pray to God not to let these things happen, but they've happened for some reason. And I'm going to tell you about these. And when I'm done telling you all these stories, many stories I've got yet to tell, a lot of ghost stories like this one, haunted houses, hauntings, sightings. I have a time slip, I think, I don't know what else to call it, where I stepped into another place in time. Pretty creepy. That was creepy. That scared me. That was one of the few ones that scared me. It was scary. I'll get to that. It was, yeah. I have a vampire story. I don't believe in vampires. I was in Whitby, England. Anything of it. I don't know what that was all about. I've got a story of psychokinesis, where when I was younger, I was able to influence things with my thought. I used to be able to put myself in a really deep trance when I was younger, before I was all caught up in the world, like we get. I've got a lot of stories. But when I get through those, I want to try to pull it together. I plan to pull it together. What I think these things mean to the Christian, to those of us that love our Lord, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and we have faith in our Lord. And those of you like myself who have been haunted and you're not looking for these things. And when I see people ghost hunting out there, I find this stuff interesting. I admit, obviously I find it interesting. I would never want to invite it into my life. I wouldn't want to open any doors or encourage anybody else to open any doors to anything other than God and God's family. But I'm going to tie it all together, and I put together some observations that will hopefully justify me telling ghost stories on YouTube, which is full of them. So I got a lot more to talk about, and that's this one. But it occurred to me that how was I able to see the level of detail on their clothing, and like I was, as I shouldn't be able to see it like that. Just like that woman's crying was unnatural, unnaturally clear. It reached me just like that, a lot of it. All right, that's it. Story 24, I'm done. Stay tuned for story 25. Hopefully it'll be warmer in my place, and I won't need to wear a cloak. I had